Hello, my name is Stacey Garrett. I am the VP of Marketing for Ideation Creative Brand Management. And today I'm going to talk about navigating ANSI ratings and Hi-Vis options for your branded gear. With over 8 million people working in the construction industry in the US, picking the right Hi-Vis for your team is really important to keep them safe. But there's so many pieces of it, it's hard to figure out what is the right thing to do. So I have invited an apparel industry expert, our go-to, Lori Dollar from Sanmar, to help us highlight some of the different features of apparel within the safety industry, high vis, reflective, ANSI rating, you name it. Thank you for joining me,
Good
Lori.
morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Okay, so sometimes choosing the right apparel is all about compliance, right? Your employees are required to wear a certain ANSI rating of garment. So that kind of dictates a little bit what you're going to get, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's not a requirement for compliance. So let's talk about high vis in general and some of the things you can do outside of ANSI rating. Like there's some amounts of reflectivity that aren't rated, right? And different high vis colors that will help keep your employees safe because they're higher visibility, but they're not worried about a compliance issue.
And there's sometimes different positions that people are going to hold where they want to be flexible, right? So, like a delivery driver, for example, they don't want to have their safety gear on driving down the road, but when they get to a job site, they need to have that safety gear on so that they're in compliance and they're protected, right? So, a few examples
Yeah.
of just so that our audience can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about. Like, this is a neon shirt. You're going to have visibility here, but there's no safety rating to this. This isn't a safety color. And we'll get into kind of some of the technical details of safety colors here in a few, but just a base layer. But it's going to be a little bit more visible than, say, if they were just wearing like a gray shirt or something like that, right? Their
Yep.
gray is going to blend into the asphalt if they're out on the road. This is an example of
Yeah.
safety color. So this is a Carhartt piece that is an actual safety color. So this is that used in a various different options in different environments, but a true rated safety. And then this is an orange piece that has a black stripe here. It has a reflective print on it.
Ah,
But this is a piece where, like, a warehouse worker, for example, would be wearing something like this so that they have a little bit of protection from their elements and just dirt and things of that nature. But we don't have any reflectivity in terms of striping details, or we're not meeting an ANSI requirement, but we are creating a visual awareness, and it's serving a
yeah.
purpose in that hopefully that company has to buy maybe some less amount of products, or that they just stay looking nicer longer with those black pieces.
Oh, if I am given a high vis safety sweatshirt, there better be black on the bottom and the cuffs because that is where I'm going to get the dirty. I mean, I'm going to get dirty really
Yeah.
fast. But I do love you pointing out the reflective imprint.
Mhm.
Like sometimes you're not trying to just be compliant, you really are trying to keep your people safe and give a message of safety, like we care about your safety. But here is an item that is going to make you higher visibility during daylight hours. Oh, and let's add the design in a reflective heat transfer for our screen print. We can even do 3M heat transfers, and that elevates, but it's not going to give you an ANSI rating. It's just going to make your person a little safer. Like it's so great. I think that paint, oh, yes, see, that would be so perfect with a good heat transfer on
Yep,
it.
you could just
Yeah.
add a little bit of reflective logo on this, and boom, you've got, this is actually a neon orange as well, not a safety rated piece, but you could add a reflective logo on that. And so you've kind of, again, not meeting a requirement, but creating that extra layer of maybe awareness versus something like this,
Oh, yeah.
where you have a little bit more even visual built into it with, see, even on that bill. So, like, think of
Uh,
who's out, on the road at night, even walking, like, headlights are going to hit that and people are going to see it.
That's amazing. And you had a good point earlier too, talking about like a truck driver. We do a lot of this Hi-Vis for truck drivers so that they can wear it in their truck, but they're comfortable. But it's still an added element of safety. And then as they go to get out of the truck, then they put on the safety vest, or in the winter months, they're putting on a jacket, a heavy ANSI 3, ANSI 2 jacket, depending on the compliance needs. And they have that added visibility. But in the truck, they're not going to wear a bulky jacket. They don't want to be wearing this big old vest. So I love that, from encouraging safety and reinforcing the safety message, because a lot of times that's really what we're talking about. How do you get your message to the employees that safety matters, not just from a compliance standpoint? You want to reinforce that on a regular basis. So I love that. And by the way, that neon pink with some reflective imprint, the fluorescent pink, oh my god. Let's just talk about the breast cancer walk that you're sponsoring for all of your employees to do. Like, what better way to really stand out, but also keep them safe while they're training for the walk? Put them in something like that. So it's not always just about safety programs, but I think I might need one of those.
I think I know where you can get one.
Yeah. Okay, so we've already talked a little bit about some of the main high-vis colors that can be ANSI rated, and some are not ANSI rated. But the colors in general, we're talking about, like you showed, that green, yellow, that by itself helps increase visibility during daylight hours. It really does make you stand out and is a great safety color. Generally, with that color, you can only get that in a blend, right? You can only get those high visibility neon fluorescent type colors by adding polyester to them.
Correct.
So that becomes a challenge when you have
Yes.
electricians, because electricians need to be wearing cotton.
Yes.
And that's why Ideation's here. We're here to help you figure out how to stay compliant and keep people safe. And the neons colors are a real challenge for that. So that neon green, yellow, and then we have the orange, like you showed in that sweatshirt. Also, nice high vis. It is less visible. I mean, let's be honest, it's a little less visible than that light green, but it also is a little more durable for getting dirty and yucky and all the things that happen when you're actually working,
Mm-hmm.
working outside of a desk like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's fluorescent red. We don't do as much of that at Ideation, but that's used more for like fire departments, medical professionals. Great way to get some visibility, add some reflective taping. So the red is also pretty common. And then also those fun colors, like, I see more of the pink. I've seen the Amazon drivers in like kind of a brighter fluorescent blue
Mm-hmm.
with the reflective in their
Yep.
vests. So there are quite a few different options depending on what your team and crews need. Okay, so now we're going to get into the most complicated part, and that is ANSI rating. It isn't that complicated in most cases because depending on your workforce, there are going to be compliance requirements for their different ANSI ratings. So ANSI basically is the American National Standard for high visibility safety apparel and accessories. Okay, so that's what ANSI is. This isn't a term we made up. Lori didn't make it up. And most of the time, OSHA or whoever will dictate, based on the job that the employee is doing, what ANSI rating is the minimum. So they will say, hey, this worker is parking cars in a parking lot, they need a class 1 ANSI. And basically, all that means is there is a lower amount of reflectivity on that garment. It is less high vis. It's not as common. We don't get as many requests for ANSI class 1, I think, because it's in lower risk situations. And the ANSI really starts to come into play when you look at ANSI class 2. So ANSI class 2 has a higher level of reflectivity. It's kind of that middle of the road safety apparel. So Lori was just showing that t-shirt. So ANSI class 2 you can get in all kinds of different. t-shirts, sweatshirts, vests, you name it. We know it's if it's ANSI class 2, we know that because it has a certain amount of reflectivity on the garment itself.
Yeah, I
Okay?
also wanted to point out too that sometimes being on a specific job site, they'll have that requirement too. So sometimes it's not only what
Mm,
somebody's doing, but what job site they're working on. So they could be walking onto a job site and OSHA has declared that an ANSI class 3 site or an ANSI class 2 site. So they have to making a delivery, walking into it. As soon as they cross that gate onto that site, they have to be in it. Here's
yes, that is very
Here's
true.
two different examples of that class 2. And then this is an example of segmented tape. So this just adds a little
Oh,
bit more comfortability sometimes to wearing it, just with that broken up.
and that's ANSI class 2.
These are both class 2. Again, we're talking
Yeah.
about the amount of coverage of that safety striping that is on the garment.
And I love that Carhartt, we can get, Carhartt makes some ANSI rated garments that we can put your brand on it. And then you're tying your brand in with a well known industry quality
Yep.
brand. Yeah. Oh, see, look at that. Does that make it ANSI class 4? No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
because still what's showing is just your class 2
Yeah, I
striping.
know.
So, but good one. Good idea there. We didn't invent something new,
But
right?
I do love I don't know how much you've worn safety stuff. I haven't worn it a lot, but that striping it is thick. So I love that textured striping on the t-shirt. Again, even if your truck drivers don't need to have an ANSI rating, man, talk about great to be able to put them in. If their requirement is ANSI 2, you can actually put them in an ANSI 2 t-shirt that's still comfortable and not super stiff. So I do love that you showed that. And I appreciate that the ANSI class 2 can be in the fluorescent yellow green or in the
Hmm.
orange. So then the highest level is ANSI class 3. ANSI class 3 has the largest amount of reflective taping. You can see like an additional stripe. It's a lot of reflectivity, but it's made for people that are working in environments where, like highway workers, people are driving 50 miles an hour past them. You want them to see that person from as far a distance as possible. So, this is another great example. ANSI class 3, notice the additional striping on the sleeve. I love that you can still get ANSI class 3 and have the black on the bottom because again, it means you're not going to have to buy as many garments and while we love to sell you garments, we want them to last as long as possible.
Yeah.
Like there's no question about it. And we care about your brand. And so we don't want your brand looking all dirty and gross out there. So that also is part of it. Is like your name on that sweatshirt or jacket is going to look better longer because of the black. So this is an ANSI class
Yep.
3 that you're showing. Here's a jacket.
Yeah. And it's also important, I think, to also call out that, this is just the tip of the iceberg in some of the styles that are offered. So, if you're working in a warm environment or during the summer, you could get a lighter weight piece that has that class 3 rating. Or if you're working out in the winter, you can get heavier pieces. And then there's all different types with hood, no hood. Of course, we're talking, Stacy and I both love this black idea, which has a number of different great uses for it, but just keeping the longevity of that product as well.
Yeah, I love that. And that is a great segue to there are so many factors that determine what safety apparel you're going to use. Compliance, of course, is one of those. Your budget, like maybe there's no compliance requirements, but you've got a certain budget you need to hit. You may not be able to do ANSI 3 because your budget won't allow it. So we can help determine what you can do with the amount of money you have to keep your employees as safe as possible. We can get creative with decoration to help increase visibility without having to go ANSI rating. But I think your point to the different climates and situations where they're working, like we know this. So we can help come up with the fabric that's going to be the most breathable. If we're getting ready to go into summer, people aren't going to want to wear a long, heavy sweatshirt. We can help look for things that have more breathability, that are going to be more comfortable for your employees, which also, in the end, keeps them safer. And it's hard to tell from a catalog or a website picture, like your team that you work with, they're going to be the ones that point that out, that say, hey, I know that you were talking about wanting this particular Carhartt t-shirt in the Hi-Vis, but I know that we're going into July and your people are going to be working out in the elements. Maybe we should do a more breathable fabric to help them stay cooler, which keeps them from being dehydrated, heat exhaustion. I mean, these are real life problems that construction workers face. And so we're here to help make sure that you get the safety rating you need that meet all of your criteria to keep your people safe. Any final thoughts here, Lori? Anything I missed?
I think that just also incorporating reflective is also fashion forward these days. So incorporating fashion or that high vis or even that reflective decoration in a unique way, is trending forward. So you can have fun with this. People can like what they wear and still have safety apparel on, which I think is fun and fantastic, right? You want to like what you're wearing
Oh,
to work
yeah.
every day.
Yeah. So that's also a thing, like utilizing safety colors for just being on trend. So I love that. Thank you so much, Lori. As always, it is such a pleasure to talk to you and to gain your insights on how to keep people safe, how to utilize your branded merch in a way that makes sense and uses your budget wisely while also being conscientious of other factors.
Thank you for having me.